Hey, everybody, welcome to day 123 of our 2020 Focus Bible reading. Getting a little bit of a later start today. Sorry about that. But here is what we're reading. We're looking at Luke chapter 14. It says, "One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. There in front of him was a man suffering from abnormal swelling of his body. Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, 'Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?' But they remained silent. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him on his way. Then he asked them, 'If one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out?' And they had nothing to say. When he noticed how the guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. 'When someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, "Give this person your seat." Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. But when you are invited, take the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he will say to you, "Friend, move up to a better place." Then you will be honored in the presence of all the other guests. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Then Jesus said to his host, "When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." When one of those at the table with him heard this, he said to Jesus, "Blessed is the one who will eat at the feast in the kingdom of God." Jesus replied, "A certain man was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. At the time of the banquet, he sent his servant to tell those who had been invited, 'Come, for everything is now ready.' But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said, 'I have just bought a field and I must go and see it. Please excuse me.' Another said, 'I have just bought 5 yoke of oxen and I'm on my way to try them out. Please excuse me.' Still another said, 'I just got married, so I can't come.' The servant came back and reported this to his master. Then the owner of the house became angry and ordered his servant, 'Go out quickly into the streets and the alleys of the town and bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame.' 'Sir,' the servant said, 'what you ordered has been done, but there is still room.' Then the master told his servant, 'Go out to the roads and the country lanes and compel them to come in, so that my house will be full. I tell you, not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet.' Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them he said, 'If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? For if you lay the foundation and are not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule you, saying, 'This person began to build and wasn't able to finish.' Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Won't he first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, those of you who do not give up everything you have cannot be my disciples. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is fit neither for the soil nor for the manure pile. It is thrown out. Whoever has ears, let them hear." All right, so this is another section, just like with a lot of the other chapters in Luke. There's way more than one theme, one thing being covered. So it is a challenge because you want to take some time and look at the different things. There's 5 sermons in this. No one has time to hear that, but. Again, it starts out with a little bit of a warning. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee, he was being carefully watched. And so what you begin to see here is the intrigue is beginning to build, that the enemies of Jesus are now not just kind of curious. Now they're watching for an opportunity. That they are tracking his movements and trying to figure out what they're going to do. Now they're being pretty quiet because they're not answering the questions of Jesus. They have pretty much decided who Jesus is, and they are working towards taking care of this Jesus of Nazareth problem that came up. Jesus does give an interesting teaching about when we seek the honor and the glory of others, when we seek to put ourselves in a higher position. Jesus says, be careful in verse 11, for all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And he's essentially saying, and that's not going to just be by other human beings. That's going to be by God. Yeah, there's a practical side to this that works in everyday life. But Jesus was always talking about the kingdom of God when he was talking about earthly things as well. And so he's warning us and reminding us that our ultimate allegiance is to God. Well, that's the way that he ends the chapter. Ends the discussion when he says, we got to take stock that if we're going to follow him, we have to be willing to give up everything. And, some people stumble over the part where he says, you have to hate your mother, your brother, your sister, that section. It's not as though Jesus is telling us we need to hate them. It's just we need to choose him above them, is what he's saying. And that's true of everything. He doesn't simply talk in relational terms. He says, whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Whoever isn't willing to give up everything to follow me can't be my disciple, because that's the level of devotion that I require. I get to be Lord. That's what Jesus is saying. And that's going to become really important information, because it's about to get very difficult. And so Jesus is doing his best to prepare them and to say, all right, you need to take stock and be ready to submit everything to my lordship. And that's a high calling. It's a high bar. It's why we don't teach that it's just, you just say a prayer and that's all that Jesus requires. No, he requires devotion. He requires loyalty, and he wants to be Lord. And so we want to be reminded of that and continually humble ourselves and submit ourselves to Christ. All right, so those are my thoughts for today. Have a good one. We will see you tomorrow.